Hello everyone, and welcome to this session looking at one of the key concerns translators have. How can they stay successful in a world where machine translation is a driving force? And to discuss this, we have Tess WHITTY, who is a certified English-Swedish translator specializing in digital marketing and localization. Hello, Tess.
Hello, Aminda. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for joining us. And particularly as last year, you were ranked as one of the world's top 50 influencers in the localization sector. So we're obviously delighted and honored to have you here today to share your experience and expertise. Tess has a background in marketing, which she says has helped her a lot in her translation career. And in her talk, we'll be finding out how, along with some of her solutions to enable translators to compete with the machines. There will be time for questions at the end of her speech, so please do send them in and vote on the ones that you want us to ask. I'll try to go to the ones with the most votes first, and they can be sent in via the questions and polls tab on the right-hand side of your session screen. You should be getting the hang of that now, but for those of you who are just logging in for this session, that's where you'll find them. And so without any further delay, Tess WHITTY, it's over to you.
Thank you. And I will open the presentation, share the screen. Let's see here. Does that look good, Aminda? Okay.
That looks fine.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I hope you've had a great day so far. I attended the What's the Bus yesterday at the start of this conference too, and it was a very interesting panel. I also wanted to thank the organizers for having me, and without further ado, I will talk about how translators can remain successful in a machine translation-driven world. Now, so what I want to try to cover during these 30 minutes is what our current situation is looking like, how we can interact with machine translation and embrace it, because it's here to stay, of course, and also provide some macro and micro solutions to compete with machine translation. Compete is kind of a weird word. Embrace and use and remain successful is a better word. And like Aminda said, I am an English into Swedish translator. I have been a translator for a long time, but my background is in international marketing, and I have 2 degrees in marketing, and I worked as a marketing manager. During my studies, I also studied linguistics, but becoming a translator wasn't on my radar right then. However, it has helped, my marketing skills has helped me a lot during my past years as a translator, and I have for the past 10 years also been training other translators in how to market their services. So let's dive in. First, I want to give you a brief overview of the current situation. You might be aware of many of them, but let's just summarize them. So the demand for translators and interpreters is at a record high, but the inflation-adjusted earnings are declining. So the translatable content is skyrocketing because we live in a more global world. And according to the statistics from myplan.com's careers, employment outlook for translators and interpreters is projected to grow by 30%, almost 30% through 2024. That is one of the highest growing industry in the world right now. But our expenses go up with the inflation, but our rates have been stagnant or decreasing. Now, not all of our rates have been, but this is the general trend. The growth in translations is in volume, but not in rates, and the cheap services are growing faster than the high quality services. That doesn't sound very good. And why is this? It's because globalization and the internet technology and the growth of the demand for translation services has resulted also in an increase of supply. In other words, an increasing number of people have started offering their services as translators. And despite the existence of ISO standards and certification programs and professional associations around the globe, as long as our profession remains unregulated and open to anyone and everyone, competition will remain high, and this can keep the prices low. One other important factor is that many clients are unaware of what is needed. They don't understand translation. They are unaware of that not all translators and translations are created equal. And since they're unaware, they're unconcerned about the quality of the service they receive. So these clients that don't understand this will not be willing to pay a premium price for the services they don't consider to be premium. And we have the buzzword of this decade, machine translation and artificial intelligence. So we've gone from the internet to computer-assisted translation tools, CAT tools. I know many translators were against those in the beginning too. But now most of us are using them. And the internet is what makes our global communication and competition possible. And the next step then after CAT tools is machine translation. But this is what allows amateurs to pass as professionals, and it's driving the post-editing of machine translation business that more and more language providers are relying on these days. This sounds like a little bit of doom and gloom, but it's not. The question is, are we going to be replaced by the machines? I don't think so. After 12 years of following the developments in machine translation, my current stance is this. There is a need for both machine translation and professional high-quality human translators. The opinions in this presentation are mine, and they're based on my own experience, a lot of research, and the experience and research from other industry experts and colleagues. I recently attended a panel with localization industry experts called The Translation Work Environment of the Future. This was at the Innovation in Translation event in the beginning of October. All panelists agreed that human translators will be needed even in 2030. I also attended a presentation by Jay Marciano from Lengo during the ATA conference last week called Thriving in the Age of Artificial Intelligence-Driven Language Services. And the conclusion is we won't be outcompeted, we just have to evolve. If reliable and secure translation is desired, machine translation should not be always used without the ongoing involvement of professional translators. So how can we then embrace the development? Taus has written a great report that I purchased in 2019 called What Options Do Translators Really Have? I don't know if I purchased it or if it's free. What options do translators really have? And they have 3 suggestions for us. By the way, I will provide a link at the end of this presentation with all the resources used too. So what we need to do, we can no longer stick our heads in the sand and pretend that this won't affect us. Instead, we need to have an open and positive attitude and an unbiased perspective to see how we can benefit from the technological developments. This is like the invention of the wheel. We have to embrace the development. And Jay Marciano said last week, instead of freaking out about the dystopian future, we need to view ourselves as an intelligent system ourselves. I mean, we are one of the best computers in the world. And we need to stay curious and build a better world model. But most importantly, if we want to compete with machine translation, we have to move up in the value chain. We can offer value-added consultancy service, advice on cultural, technical, or authoring issues, or provide controlled language services. So what does this mean? It means that there's room for both. Machine translation is needed. There's so much content these days that human translators can't take care of it all. But we have to, in order to be successful, we have to move toward this segment here, high quality translations. These are the ones that required an expert touch of a practiced translator with a full command of the context, human intent, and target audience. So we need to focus on training ourselves to become really good at what we do, at translation. We also benefit from learning a lot about copywriting and cultural consultation. And we also need to focus on being very professional, of course. This also means that less professional translators will be outcompeted by machine translation. Let's dig a little deeper. The ATA published also an article and a report about macro and micro solutions to counteract the threat of machine translation. This article is called, "Is There a Future in Freelance Translation? Let's talk about it." Now, this one is a few years old, but their solutions and suggestions are still valid. So the macro solutions are the ones that we as individuals don't have much control over, but they suggest client education, and this can be done by professional associations, by government, by larger organizations. Educating the client of the need for translation and human translations and the value we provide. As ATA's treasurer John Milan puts it, together we can educate the public and ensure that our consumers value us more like diamonds and less like water. This also encompasses language education. Now, this language education I know is much better in Europe than it is in the United States, where I'm based right now. But if people understand the value of languages and different languages and communication, they will also understand the value of translation better. And we also need more industry-wide regulation. Whether we're talking about regulating the access to the profession itself or controlling access to professional associations, there's no question that if we have more regulation and rules, the competition will be less. But what I wanted to focus on today are the micro solutions for the translator, what we can do, what we can affect ourselves. These include niche specialization, focus on areas where high quality translations are needed, adding further value to our translation services, and also leveraging machine translation. So let's look at all of these. One solution is to specialize then in a certain niche and topic. The more specialized we are in a certain topic, the more of an expert we become and are seen. When I first started out as a translator, you could make a good living as a generalist. Now I think that newer translators are competing more with machine translation, and it's more important to niche down and specialize as early as possible. So here's an example. A translation client or agency that needs a good translation of an automotive patent will be more likely to be attracted by somebody that says that they are engineers specializing in patent translation in automotive and working with a team, instead of another translator with the same language combination that says high quality and reliability only. But there are also new and growing areas of specialization to consider. There's been a huge rise in the demand for digital marketing translation services. International companies realize that machine translation tools are simply not up to the challenge for optimizing websites, digital marketing content, and they are looking for native translators with experience in this. So here is an example of some growing sectors. To get international search engine optimization right, you need more than just language skills. You need local expertise and knowledge about how searches work in each target market. So getting keyword research right in all of your target markets is one of the first and most important steps and can require more than the usual machine or professional translation services. And companies are also seeing the need to be engaged on social media in a good way and communicating directly with clients. There is a rise of chatbots, of course, but if you have used the chatbot yourself and noticed that it's just a computer, you know what I mean. The communication just isn't there and it isn't perfect. And there's also localization of mobile and web apps. It needs to be targeted to the user and the locale. And international email marketing also can pose some challenges for businesses because of the cultural and local differences, legal constraints, and different attitudes to technology and privacy. So a local translator can help the company with these nuances. When I attended Jay Marciano's presentation, he also mentioned new services that will be needed. For example, language engineers that do linguistic asset development and evaluation. Post editors, of course. This makes sense when the training data is of very high quality and the domain for both training data and translatable data is very well defined. We will also need a lot of lexicographers. These do scripting and linguistic rules development. And language consultants that work with the clients and the LSPs in order to decide when to use human translators versus machines, depending on cultural aspects, contexts, etc. Those were the strategies for niche specialization and some new service areas. Now let's focus on our areas where high quality translations are very, very important. The first one to think of is transcreation. This is the art of creative translation. It requires deep consideration by a marketing-minded translator to ensure that the message keeps the same impact and meaning across the borders. Basically, a transcreation requires as much time as the original development of the original copy. And it's not only language related. Audiences react differently within different cultures to numbers, structures, images, and even colors. Some numbers and colors can cause issues due to superstitions in certain countries, and numbers in your brand name or even phone numbers can make the audience switch off or be wary of the company. And the opposite is true. You can use this to gain trust by using lucky numbers and colors. So machine translation will not be able to combine culture, language, and emotion into a creative and compelling text anytime soon. For this, we need humans. Apart from transcreation, the more creative part of text translations, there are also publications that absolutely need to be perfect. These are, for example, annual reports, pharmaceutical research journals, or any published material that can affect a company's image and brand. And we can become more like brand ambassadors and product testers. As companies with products to sell attempt to personalize their offerings to the tastes of their target markets, they will depend on local ambassadors or consultants who can advise them on the cultural specifics of a given target community and help promote products and services in a given local language. So translators can be aware of these new opportunities that can open up because we know a specific language and culture, and we can offer services to the clients and help build trust among end customers on the ground. Now, we usually do this automatically. For example, I constantly have to say, oh, we can't use a home run in Sweden because people don't relate to it. That's a very American football term, and other things like that. So we kind of do it automatically, but we can sort of develop this service. And we can't forget that we can use it as an additional tool, just as translators embraced CAT tools earlier on. We can use it to increase both translation speed and consistency for certain texts. A professional translator can use it as a reference material or as a source or for alternative translation suggestions. Joost Setje, a colleague of mine and an industry expert in technology, says, I believe we need to become more creative when using machine translation. We need to go beyond just the concept of post-editing. This can be done by having multiple machine translation engines connected to a project and just using fragments that can automatically be extracted, or using machine translation to correct fuzzy matches, etc. So we can use it as a productivity tool. One example is that if I receive a translation where I have to translate all the weekdays or all the countries of the world, I don't necessarily have to go and do that manually anymore. The machine can do it for me. I'm zooming through this so I can be fast. So to summarize all this, translators, we need to up our game. We need to be sure that we hone our craft and we focus on niche markets. We can also use machine translation as a way to boost productivity and provide additional services. We also need to become experts in what we do. Pick a niche and become experts in it. Look at all the new areas of specialization that are needed. We need to look at all the additional services that will be needed, and consider adjusting our own business model and pricing schemes in order to make machine translation profitable and in order to compete with it. So that was very brief and very fast. I hope there's a lot of questions. I want to say thank you for this. This is where you can contact me. And also, these are some resources that I have used in my research for this presentation. I don't know if I should leave this up, or Aminda, if they will get the resources afterwards, that I can send the presentation.
I was just about to explain, thank you, Tess. I was just about to explain that all the PowerPoint slides that are used throughout TEF will actually be put on the DG translation website for the forum. So they'll probably be next week. So people will be able to get them. So no worries about that. Thank you. A couple of things struck me from your talk. I like the idea of producing diamonds, not water. I thought that was very good. Very interesting to see all the different areas in the digital arena, like SEO, social media, web apps and mobile apps. So that was very interesting. And I like the idea about lucky numbers and colors. For example, I'm based in Italy, and if you're going out in public, you're going to be on stage, you should not wear purple, because purple is associated with priests at a funeral. So purple, no going. So very interesting on that point of view as well. Now, we have a number of questions come in, and the one with the top votes is coming from Fabrizio. He's got 28 votes. And he says, no matter how good you are with technology, could we agree that to be a good post editor, you need to be an excellent linguist? Amateurs will be fooled by NMT's fluency.
Yes, I think so. I think you also have to be an excellent linguist in order to produce an excellent translation. However, well, I don't know. The developments go very, very fast in machine translation. When I don't do post editing, and I've turned it down. I did try it early on, and then I think that it depends on the level of quality that they require. If it's for if it will be published, or if it will be just for understanding. If it's just for understanding, then you don't need to have an excellent translation. However, if you need something that will be published and read by buyers and stakeholders, then yes, you also need an excellent linguist to do that.
Okay, thank you. Our second question is from Chris Durbin, and she's got 25 votes for her question. She was also in the panel that you watched yesterday on What's the Buzz?
Yes.
And she says, surely only parts of the market are MT driven, no? Shouldn't translators be encouraged to reframe that as MT assisted in some cases?
Yes, that is another way to express it and frame it. I'm not quite sure I understand your complete question, Chris. So if you want to clarify it, MT-driven market, yes. That means that there's such a huge demand for translations all over, and everybody with a business, language service providers and bigger companies are taught and told to use machine translation to become more efficient, and that's what's meant with machine translation driven market. But translators as individual, yes, should be encouraged to reframe it as MT assisted, just like we did with CAT tools earlier on. I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Now, Gabriella has got a very interesting one here. Which arguments do you use with your clients to convince them to accept your higher rates, as in higher than machine translation proofread by a cheap translator?
Oh, this is where negotiation techniques and stuff come into play. I motivate my higher rates with my expertise in the area. Usually I only focus on the areas I am an expert in these days. I also motivate them with my long experience in the field and my continuing education. So for example, I have taken courses in copywriting, I have taken courses in international SEO, etc., to improve my skills in the field I'm working with. And I'm also motivating it with my 2 certifications that I do have. So it's also a question of client education. Some accepts this and they understand it and they still want me. If I need to go further, I'm starting to explain, you know, the value I can provide with the translation and prove and provide proof and testimonials of sometimes you can even get return on investments from a campaign that has been translated. So if I dig deeper into that.
It's interesting that you actually, you ask your clients to give you that information so you can use it the next time. I don't know how common that is.
It's not very common, and you can't do it when you work with agencies or companies that are the middlemen, unless you can actually see it yourself published. But you can do it with direct clients, and that is something you should think of if you do that. So.
And this kind of ties in the next question from Salka. We're talking about Fabrizio, which is amateurs are fooled by MT's fluency, and she agrees. It says many clients will be fooled too, so clients are going to be fooled. And so we've got to have the proof ourselves to show them that we need to be in the loop. And how can you do that? Again, this is all part of the client education kind of thing.
Yes. Yes, it is. We need to be our own ambassadors. We need to maybe even show examples of how machine translation can damage your reputation. For example, when Amazon launched in Sweden last year, it created a lot of publicity because machine translation was used and produced some quite hilarious and inappropriate translations of the product names. So that is an easy way to give an example. But yes, you need to do the client education, and we need to, as volunteers and members of professional associations, we need to sort of also encourage them to do client education and make clients more aware of the need for quality translations. And usually, sometimes when I talk to clients and even agency clients, they have realized, when they have used the cheaper machine translation and the cheaper translation, they have realized their mistakes and basically asked me to fix it. And I say, oh, I don't do editing or proofreading for people I don't know anymore. But this is sort of the importance of using a high quality translation from the start, because you save money in the end.
Okay, good tip. We do have quite a few more questions, but we're kind of coming to the end. There is one that I wanted to, there were quite a few about rates and pricing, and is it per word, per hour? I don't want to get into that detail, but there was one which was sent in by Anonymous, which said, with the increased offer of LSPs worldwide, what do you think of providers, in other words, translators and interpreters, aligning their honorariums to the client's market? Briefly.
Sorry, what was your last?
So I was just saying very briefly, because we've only got a minute left.
I don't quite understand what you mean with aligning the honorarium to the client's market. This is the same thing. We have to be able to explain our value. So for example, transcreation cannot be priced in per word, and a lot of translation, like this has been talked about for 10 years. We should move from per word pricing to hourly or even project pricing. Yes, they need to align it to the honorariums to the client's market, and this is done by showing what you can do, by showing the value you provide, and by showing sort of the return on investment that can be produced. I hope that answers the question.
Wonderful. Well, I'm not quite sure, because we anonymous, so we don't know who you are, but hopefully it did answer it. And very interesting, this whole idea of moving and getting let's say the proof to back up your fees. So and also the proof that if you don't do this, this is what could happen. So that's very, very interesting. Well, I'm afraid we've now come to the end of this session. Gosh, it really flew by. Thank you, Tess, for all your valuable advice and the interesting observations. As I've said, we'll be posting her PowerPoint slides on the DGT Translation Europe Forum website. So we're now going to have a short break for 5 minutes, and that'll be followed by a keynote interview that I'll be conducting with Anna Schlegel, Gala's Person of the Year in 2018. I hope you can tune in again for that. But until then, I close this session.